Hi, Diana. It's lovely to have you here today on a rainy Wellington day, but that's okay. It's nice and warm inside.
I'm so excited to be here and to talk with you, Judith. I know we've spoken at length before, so we have so much in common. I'm really excited to join you.
I know, and I remember the first time we met, and my first thought was, I really like this woman. It was, it was just everything about you, and just your warmth and your friendly demeanour, and it was just, I was so drawn to you. So I'm really, really privileged to have you on. So thanks for taking time. Do you want to just do a quick introduction?
Yeah, sure. So Diana Rickman, Mindset Magicians. And I've just been in the Hutt Valley for a short while now, just over a year. We moved down here from Hawke's Bay. I'm working with children who are anxious about schoolwork, maths in particular, anxious about life, anxious about friendships. And I use a combination of mindfulness techniques and mindset work just to help them learn ways that they can manage how they feel, make sense of how they feel, and then as a result of that, start to change the way that they react. So I'm all for empowering kids. Anxious children can grow up into anxious teenagers and anxious adults. To me, it's about trying to equip people with tools before it goes too far. You know, whether we use those tools or not is another matter, but that's what it's about. It's teaching people, particularly children, that there are other ways to feel and they can have a choice and be in control of that.
Wow. I mean, and I just find that, you know, obviously a lot of the children from the families that I work with have real anxiety around food, and often that anxiety extends to other things, and they might be anxious in social settings, or they might be, you know, generally anxious if they, you know, if they have to do something that's new for them. And I find that, you know, often it does go hand in hand, food anxiety and general anxiety.
Yes.
Is that something that you've noticed?
Absolutely. So I mentioned in amongst all of that maths coaching. And the reason I got into maths coaching is I've spent 20 years plus working in schools, lots of support roles. So I'm an ESOL trained teacher, English as a foreign language. And I found that I could help children to relax into learning if we did a little bit of mindset work beforehand. If I thought about how I was breathing when I worked with them, that mirror imaging, all those mirror neurons, I could affect the way that they felt to some extent. And so I started thinking about that anxiety and how it affects them in other areas. And the maths really was the starting point, because often parents will call me and say, my child's not getting it with maths. They used to feel confident, now they're not so sure. After a first meeting with the child, you know that there are other things going on, and the parent will open up and talk about, oh, they used to like playing netball, now they don't want to play netball anymore. They didn't want to go to a party the other weekend. So you're quite right. It's usually just the little tip of the iceberg. It's usually, and for some reason, that child has taken on a way of expressing how they feel that we name anxiety. Right. So it's if you like, it's a learned behavior. It's a learned way of reacting, and it's probably worked on occasion for them. Yeah. It's not going to work long term. No. It's definitely not going to, and they probably know now that it's not the best way to behave, but it's very hard once you've set it up as a pattern of coping to then leave it behind.
Yeah, and I mean, I know for myself that when I was quite precocious, so I was really good at reading early and writing early, and then I remember this so clearly. I was about 7, and my teacher said, "Oh, but you're not very good at maths."
Yeah.
And then I went, oh no, I'm not as good at maths as I am at everything else. And suddenly for me it was like, oh no, well maybe I'm not very good at this, and it set me on a path. And the whole way through, even through high school, in my own head, my dialogue was always, well, I'm not very good at maths.
Yeah. And so that was fed to you or given to you. What a lovely gift given to you.
It's beautiful. Yes.
But when we're very young like that, we take it up somebody in authority. They know these things. Yes. And particularly if it's backed up with, you're good at this and this and this, but you're not good at that. We go, yeah, well, that's absolutely right. it's not about being good or not. It's about perhaps at that particular point, that particular part of maths was a challenge for you. It didn't come as easy as the other bits. You know, there's a lot of work been done on this, lots of research that this whole idea about some people have a maths brain and some people don't. There's no truth in that. There's no scientific evidence to support a maths brain. Some people are supported better at key learning points along the way.
Right.
And those key learning points can be when we're very young. Things like your number bonds to 10. Very simple. What two numbers can you add together to make 10? And that's passed over very quickly. And if you've not caught up with that, or for some reason at some point someone has said something to you, could even just be the person you're sitting next to, you're so slow, that goes in. We take it in like a sponge. And then the next thing is times tables, the dreaded times tables. Now, a lot of it is down to the way that these are still taught in schools. We don't all learn in the same way, but because of pressures of time, numbers of children in classrooms, especially nowadays, you can't be always teaching in the way that every single child needs to learn.
Right.
There are ways around that. There are ways to do that. But in general, things are taught and they're offered up in a prescribed way. And if you don't learn in that way, or you don't learn at that speed, you can miss key but very important chunks of learning, which are the basis on which we hang all the rest of our maths learning. And then what do you say? I'm no good at maths. I'm not fast enough. Or any other subject or task that you might take on.
So if our child comes home and says to us, look, I'm not very good at maths, and what do we do?
Yeah, so acknowledge what they're saying. I wouldn't agree with it, but I would be asking questions like, oh, I'm sorry to hear you think that way. Why do you think that way? What makes you think that way? Never, ever, ever go into the story of, oh, that's okay, I wasn't good at maths either. You probably, you're probably like me. I couldn't do maths. I would be just asking the question, always open questions about what's gone on, looking for what's going on underneath. Even at the back of your mind, having this little idea that maybe something has scared them, right. Maybe something made them angry at some point. Is there that fear going on, or is there anger going on, or is there something else? What is it? But usually it can come back to two very key things. There's some sort of fear response, or it's gone over into so fight or flight. Fight or flight.
Yeah, and I mean, I get that, because obviously around eating, it's very much the same. We channel our anxieties into eating, and suddenly we go, can't do that, and then it's not a logical thought process. Just the shutters come down, and it's like, no, nude, can't go there, and I guess we do the same with maths or whatever else it might be.
We do. And it's very easy to do it, and it's very protective. So it makes perfect sense that we do it.
Absolutely. And then, of course, it gets reinforced, because then the next test we take, we don't do very well. So then we say, okay, well, I am terrible at maths. Look, see, mama, So what do we do if we have a child who's going down that path and is sort of self-confirming that, and the test scores maybe not where we'd like them to be, or where we think they should be? What do we do with our child? How do we support them?
Yeah, so supporting is a two-pronged attack, really. One is that finding out what's going on in the classroom. How is maths taught in the classroom? How is there, when they proceed through a topic, or when they come across new work, how is that introduced? How is it measured? Are they in a group that is noticeably the bottom group, or not the top group? Children know this. So look at how maths is taught in the classroom. Some schools that I've worked in, they have a maths ladder, and it's on the wall, and that's like a big sheet of paper, and everybody's name is on a little bit of Velcro and moves up and down depending on how good they are at maths. Sometimes, quite often, maths will be judged for this maths ladder in very quick recall of facts. And you'll find that children are expected to know, what's 3 more than 7? And you've got 3 seconds to answer that. And depending on the teacher, this could be asked of them perhaps before the school day starts, when other children are coming in, hanging their coats up, putting things, so there's a lot of noise going on, but there will be other children standing there watching, you know, 3, 4 other children, and that child's standing there, and it's a bit like you're going, what is it? What is it? What's it? And all the other kids are going, I know it, I know it. And they can't help themselves. They want to, you imagine if you're stood there, it must feel like you've suddenly sort of beamed into this wasteland, you know, and you can hear the wind whistling and you're feeling a bit sick in your stomach. What happens to their brain? It's shut down. It's a fear response. So how is maths being taught, delivered? How is it being judged and measured? And is that really fitting in with your child? Look for those little triggers. The other thing then is at home, reinforcing that maths is a part of life, because one of the things I hear the most is that, well, that's not relevant. I won't use that. When am I ever going to do algebra? I won't need to know that. I'm not going to be that. I'm not going to be a maths person. And, you know, and it's not true. Maths is life. Maths is how we make sense of the world.
Yeah.
And maths, when it's taught and experienced as a discovery subject, as a way of making sense, it's exciting. There's so many patterns in maths. And that's where my work comes in. I focus greatly on the patterns, because often the children I'm working with don't learn maths and see numbers as a linear sequence. They see it as a pattern, but they don't realize the patterns are there because it's not emphasized in the way the maths is taught. So we go right back to basics and we look at the ways you can make patterns in maths by drawing patterns, by taking the numbers and looking at how can you lay out 3 times 7 or 3 plus 7. You know, what sort of patterns can we make with blocks? And so understanding how your child learns, but also what's going on at school is a key element, but then not reinforcing that they're failing, rather that this is a challenge for you, and really good things come from challenges. The more we're challenged.
Love that. Yeah. So
the truth.
Reframing failure to challenge. I really like that. So, I mean, you know, that was going to be obviously, you know, some of my next questions was, how do we build up confidence? Because so often our children don't feel confident about something that they're not naturally good at, you know, sort of right off the bat. And suddenly they go, oh, no, I'm not very good at that. Don't like it. And, you know, and they don't want to step out of their comfort zone. So I guess this is a two-pronged thing. How do we get them to step out of their comfort zone when they go, oh, well, I won't be any good at that, so I don't want to do it? And then secondly, how do we build confidence so they go, okay, I might not be very good at it to start, but I can get better at it. So
growth mindset. So growth mindset. So I get there's a lot of confusion around growth mindset. Very often it's reported back to me by children. They say, I know what growth mindset is. That's about, you know, you're not afraid to try things, you know. And then others will say, oh, that's about just being cheerful and, you know, just getting on with things, you know. And they're not wrong, but a real growth mindset says, this is hard. This is really hard and I'm struggling with it, but I know I'm learning. I know I'm growing my brain, and I know that every struggle is part of learning, and it's an important part of learning. And I'm willing to sit and experience that horrible feeling that struggling brings. The horrible feeling of I'm not good enough. I can't do this. I'm not as good as everybody else. And so that's where the language at home can work wonders. You keep just reframing all those negative stereotypes and beliefs around, I can't do this. And sometimes it's as simple as, oh, but you can try. And I would just be listening to what they're saying. What is their go-to phrase? I can't, I won't, and just working with that. And I would be weaving it into a sentence all the time. So that even though you feel like you can't, we're going to give it a try, because I'm here with you. I'll help you. That whole idea about struggling and failing at things, that there is no such thing as failure, but we do put a lot of emphasis on that if you don't get it right, you've failed. There is no such thing as failure. Model what you're teaching them or want them to do. Talked about when you have struggled with things and found things really hard, and it took you 5 or 6 times before you really felt like you'd got it. Share that. And that, how did that make you feel? You know, be honest. At first, I really thought this job is not for me, or I'm never going to learn to drive. You know, you might even be completely honest. And do you know what? One day I even cried about it. And I went home and I sat on my bed and I cried because I thought, I'm never going to get this. And then I thought, but I know. So to tell the story, you know, so reinforcing that everybody struggles and it's a very normal thing to do. There are so many stories out there of people in the news, sports players particularly, who talk about how time and time again they practiced before they managed to be that top goal scorer.
Yeah, absolutely.
So look at what your child's interested in and see if you can pull in people who they might aspire to or find interesting to weave it in. But for me, it would just simply be listening. What are they saying about it? If they just say, I can't, then it's very difficult because that's quite challenging for us. But that's taking that deep breath ourselves. And even though you feel you can't, and it really feels bad, I'm here to help you and we can try together. Right. And just see how that goes down. You're going to just keep using different sentences, different language until you get that key. And you might not get an instant response of them. They sit down and go, okay, yeah, I'll do my maths homework. But what happens is you're talking to that subconscious, that bit that's going, I'm going to die. I'm probably going to die because I have to sit and do my maths homework. Makes no sense. Makes no sense. But that's the reaction.
Yeah.
And when you address that, this clever part at the front of our brain, prefrontal cortex, that comes up with all these big adjectives and reasons why we can't do things.
Yeah.
That's not really listening. The subconscious is listening. The bit that's going, do I fight it? Do I run away? Is it going to kill me? When you say, even though this feels bad and really hard, and you feel like you can't do this, we can try, and I'm here to help you. And it's okay to feel this way.
And I guess, you know, I come across this all the time in what I do, where people, you know, I laughed because one of my son's friends said, I eat no cooked vegetables. and I went, okay, so the more you tell yourself that, obviously the less chance we have of you ever eating the cooked vegetables, because that's the soundtrack, that's what you're telling yourself. So, you know, when you have a child that is crying over homework or is angry about doing homework, then I guess we're looking beyond that and saying that is a fight or flight reaction. And they're probably saying not that I don't want to do it, but that there's something about it that's making me feel really uncomfortable.
Yeah, and if you start addressing that fight or flight, then you can start having conversations around the why. And I guess a really important thing here, so positive affirmations. I'm not a big fan of positive affirmations. To me, it's a bit like taking words and hitting yourself with them. Right. So it would be the same for you with the child who, you know, I don't eat cooked vegetables. Well, yes. A positive affirmation there would be, I'm a child who likes to try new things and eat cooked vegetables. Well, how is that going to help them go from, I don't care, it doesn't, you know, there's a process in between, isn't there?
Yeah, absolutely.
Saying it doesn't make it happen. And it would be the same with any other subject or activity that your child is saying, I can't, I won't, I don't want to. Instead of saying, okay, but we're a child who, you're a child who tries new things, or you're a child who doesn't give up. Go with what they're saying. I can't do it. And even though right now you feel like you can't do it, and I understand that, and it's okay to feel that way, we can try together to feel better about this.
So let me jump in here. So what you're doing is not taking sort of opposite ends of the spectrum. What you're saying is mirroring their language and using their language so that you're talking to them in a way that resonates with them.
Yes. Don't agree that the teacher is wrong. Don't agree that the way maths is taught is wrong. No blame, no shame. It's acknowledgement of how they feel right now. Even if you're thinking, this is ridiculous. Yeah. It's not ridiculous for them. It's acknowledgement of exactly how they feel, and then you mirror it back, you repeat it back. But The trick is you then put in a hint of possibility,
Right.
even though, and even though this is awful, and we can do it together.
Yes, one of my favorite phrases with eating is, this is not my favorite thing yet.
Yeah, exactly.
It's okay to say, I don't really like it, but it's not okay to shut that door forever.
Yeah, so you want it. That's exactly it. You're just opening up the possibility that at some point, maths or anything really, tying shoes, whatever it is, will be easier for them, will be more accessible, will not feel so painful.
Right, yes. And so so let's talk about some sort of coping strategies that we can, sort of general, our child's feeling anxious, and it might be about, going to a party, or it might be going to camp, or, there's lots of different things. How can we give them some coping strategies where if they're going to be away from us, they go, you know what, I'm going to be okay.
Yeah, okay. So this is one of the things I love most. So we have lots of parts of our body that respond very well to pressure, gentle pressure. And when we press on them, when we apply this pressure, it lights up parts of our brain and gives us a dopamine response, feel-good hormones. Very small amounts, but enough to help balance out the fight or flight hormones of cortisol and adrenaline, amongst others. So I teach children how to use these points, because then it doesn't matter if the favorite cuddly toy or the blanket or the small thing that they have in their pocket gets lost or forgotten. They've got these things with them all the time. The other thing is breathing, using breathing in a prescriptive way. The more we get into fight or flight, the more our breath comes up higher and higher into our chest. And then it adds into that feeling of being anxious, because we get tight in our chest and in our shoulders. Children often talk about their heads feeling. If you ask them to draw a picture of a body, and where do you, when you worry, where do you feel that worry? Often they'll draw a little picture of a dot in their head or an explosion in their head. So they can be quite disconnected between what they're thinking and the way it makes their body feel. When you can bring your child back down into their body, because fight or flight often gives us an out-of-body experience, we've become disconnected. So how does it make you feel? Really talking about the way your body feels, and then bringing it down. And if they can then start to identify they feel tight in their chest or their stomach, you've got something you can work with, because you can breathe into that. And imagine, great imaginations, children, imagine if you breathed in, that you released and relaxed and comforted, whatever words are going to work, that part of your body. It might be your shoulders. Imagine them feeling softly touched or rubbed. So you're talking with the child what feels good. You're looking for the response from them. Your tummy feels like it's being massaged, or it feels warm. You're wrapped in a blanket. That sort of thing. So they can imagine that as they take that breath. And it just takes a little bit of practice at a time when they're not anxious, for them then to know that our brains love patterns and setting up conditioned responses. So very quickly, when we take that breath, our brain is also thinking of the warm, snuggly blanket, or the caress and the cuddle from mum, or the rubbing of the tummy with a hot water bottle, or whatever it is, imagination. So it's like a double whammy then. The breath is working because it's loosening things out, but you've also got that imagination coming in, that conditioned response. There are lots of ways you can use the breath. You can use breathing, obviously, just to stay alive, which we do. But if you start thinking about it as a tool, any breath where you take a shorter breath in than you breathe out starts to affect, and in a positive way, inside our brain, that little response that's about clarity, about getting into an alpha state. Alpha, obviously, is that hunter state. It's that, but it's more than that. It's that awareness, total calm, total focus. Think about a predator cat. We would call them an alpha animal, a hunter. But look at how they hunt. Look at when they're stalking something. There is nothing else going on in the world. They are focused on what they're following. And so if we can get ourselves into that sort of brainwave state, we're able to do that as well. If we're doing that, then we can recognize that the thoughts we're having or the task in front of us is not actually a life or death event. We can have more, we can look at it in a clearer way. So
Right.
that's what the breath would be about. It's about affecting your brain, having a positive effect on your brain so that you can then see things for what they are. There's other techniques as well. Again, all of the things I teach don't require you to have any props with you. It's about using your body. Anchoring is a great tool. And again, these are best practiced outside of an anxious moment.
Right, yes.
That's standing, so that you really get that feeling of standing very firm, strong on the ground. And then imagining again that an anchor is pulling you down to the ground. And that as it does that, you're safe and you're calm. And you can make sense of what comes. You don't cope with everything, you know, but you'll be able to make sense of it. You'll be able to do what you need to do, which might be ask for help or figure it out for yourself. So again, there's those possibilities. It's not all on you. You don't have to figure all of this out. But when your child is anchored and calm, they can start making better decisions. Anchoring, you can practice, it can be quite fun, very noisy, a lot of jumping up and stomping really hard into the ground, and using breath again, but in but a very loud shouting way, you know, but like a warrior. So warrior pose with yoga is very good for that as well. But always talking about drawing down and feeling that connection with the ground again before they go do something that's a bit worrying. So maybe a visit to the dentist, if that's very anxious making. Practice some of that beforehand. You know, that I am here, I am present, and I can breathe, and I will know what to do when I need to if I start to feel anxious. And
Right.
those possibilities of knowing what to do can include asking mum for help or asking an adult for help. It's not all on you. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, that does. Okay, so that's great. So that gives us some ideas of how we can sort of pre-prep our child so that if they do come across a difficult situation, and I have to say that, you know, especially when I am working with families with older children, then I often recommend that, you know, when we start to get into that, the food, you know, that children step back and do some breathing and just, you know, take it down a notch so you don't just get yourself into a state over something that really we don't need to get worked up about. You know, yes, I appreciate that it's something that is really challenging, but we can approach this in a different way.
Yeah.
So what do we do if we've got a perfectionist? And you know, and then this for me resonates so well. I can use this on myself because, you know, there's so many things that I like to be just done, you know, in a certain way, and I know that a lot of children say, well, you know, it's got to be like this, and of course for food, so often we get very rigid around the way that we do things because it's very comforting to have things done in a specific way, and when someone does it a different way, that can make us really anxious because we say, hang on, it's not the same, I'm out of my comfort zone. So, you know, what do we do if we've got, I guess, again, that's probably two questions. What do we do if we have someone who just goes, you know, my drawing's rubbish because it's not absolutely perfect and it's not exactly the way that I want it to be, you know, in my head. And then we've got that other thing where if something's not done exactly the way we want it to be done, we freak out.
Yeah, okay. So this is assuming that doesn't come from some sort of clinical diagnosis, you know, where some OCD or something like that. So if you have a neurotypical child who's just developed a coping mechanism, which is to want everything to be, as you described, perfect, then, I mean, this is so important because it can really be the death of learning, particularly as children get older into their teens. It's this whole perfectionism and a source of great stress and anxiety, and children dropping out of school because they're just, or university, you know, the pressure that they put on themselves. And I'm sure we've all experienced that, you know, the voice inside our head is always much, much stronger and far more horrible than anything anybody else says to us usually.
Yeah.
So switching that off is understanding that that's what we're doing, that it's just about, it's trying to draw that link again back to this very basic reaction we have, a sort of a caveman reaction, if you like, that fight or flight response. It's amazing how much of this goes back to fear of being rejected, fear of being cast out. And you think, hold on a minute, my drawing's not the way I want it to be. How can that be about fight or flight? But it is, in a strange way. It's about fitting in. It's about how others perceive us. And we put that pressure on ourselves before others do. I better get in first before somebody else notices that I'm really rubbish at drawing.
But also, I'm a good drawer. So now when I've done this thing and it's not great, you know, are people going to find out that I'm actually not as good as they think I am?
Yeah. So that also comes down to the language again you use around your children. So this telling your child you're very clever. Oh, you're so clever. Never stop at that. Always qualify. Why are they clever? That was very clever, the way that you worked out that if you put that in there, it would do this or that. That showed a lot of reasoning. That showed a lot of patience. I like the way you took the time to work that out. That must have been difficult. What happened before you got it right? Never just you're clever, because you set that as the benchmark then. And children will look at what they did last. Oh, that made me clever. I got it absolutely right. I got an A+ on that. Therefore, if I don't get A+, I'm no longer clever. Right. So redefine clever. Clever is that ability to keep going when it gets hard. That ability to take criticism, as long as it's given in a positive way.
Yeah.
You know, that ability to keep going past that point where you think, I just want to put this down and give up. You know, they're allowed to walk away and come back. We all are. But even reframing that, let's take some time out to rethink this. You know, sometimes it's good to take a break and our brain works things out on its own. That's a skill and quite a magic skill that we have that children don't appreciate, is that sometimes our brain, quite often our brain, will work the problem out for itself, for us. If we come away from the problem, we get a fresh view of it. So that's talking about the way your brain works. Never that you're just clever. Why are they clever? So try and drop the word clever. Also, you're a really great artist would come into that. Why? Look at the picture. Become an art critic. I love the way you used red there. Even if it's just this great red splurge.
Yeah.
And it's all outside the lines. Yeah. Okay? I like the way you use the red there. Tell me what you were thinking about. Or if it's a picture and you can't make head nor tail of it.
And then they say, and then you say it's beautiful, and they go, but mummy, you've got it upside down.
Yeah, exactly. So you look at it and you go, wow, thank you for sharing that with me. Tell me about this. And it's, you can do it in a way that you've got to watch how you speak, because even very little children will look at it and be like, you know, you're taking the mick, aren't you? So, you know, you've got to be sincere about it. But I've worked with very young children in kindergartens, and that perfectionism comes in very young. And you'll see them at 4, they'll just approach the canvas and all the colours are going on and they're splurging it and they're just reveling in the paint. And then they're getting up to 5 before they go to school and they're looking at what the person's doing. I don't want to do that because I can't stay in the lines, or it's not as good as that, or my face doesn't look like a face, or they're so critical. Yes. And so it's finding things, well, you may be struggling to do that, but you know what? Sometimes it takes time to learn how to do that. You know, I could show you what I've learned about drawing faces if you like. It might help. We can do it together. But some things take people longer than others, you know, and so it's getting across that message that everything and anything that's worth having is worth working for. And should be worked for.
Well, and that's a great lesson for life. You know, if we can instill that we have to work at this, you know, and then, you know, how much better placed are our children moving forwards?
Yeah, it sounds very negative, but life is not meant to be easy.
Mm.
And for whatever reason now, our culture tells us it should be, particularly in the sort of media that children are exposed to. Life is not meant to be easy.
Well, and we can't all be good at everything, because realistically, there is always, you know, except for the odd few people in the world who are the best at what they do.
Yeah.
Not all of us can be the best at everything all the time.
No, but look at why they're the best at what they do, because they chose, important word, they chose to focus and to put in the hours. They made that a priority for them.
Yes.
And your child may make a priority of something else. They may be great with Legos and building things. You know, they might build phenomenal things with Legos. And that's where their priority is at the moment. The interest is there because of something will have clicked with them at the start and made it a desirable thing to do, and therefore they put the time into it, and it's got better and better and better. And with other children, it's other things, kicking a football or throwing a ball, or, you know, whatever it is. Something will have clicked at the beginning. They won't instantly have been really good at it. There'll have been some other motivator there that made them want to do it again and again and again. And even though perhaps every time they threw the ball at the hoop, they missed it 4 out of 5 times, they had a motivator there that said, no, I want to get better at this.
Yeah.
And so missing the hoop wasn't the important thing. Getting it through the hoop was.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's the key, that you're focusing on what is it you want to achieve rather than what is the pain you're going to have to go through to get there.
Yes. And that's, I guess, why goal setting is important, because then we're chasing something that's a little bit out of our reach, but there's a reason that we're doing this. Yeah. No, fabulous. Well, that's given me so much to think about. My head's sort of spinning. And I love, you know, I'm a big one for saying that language matters. The way that we talk really matters. The way we talk to ourselves, and the way we communicate with our children, and the words that we use are actually really important, which isn't to say that we have to worry with everything that comes out of our mouth that we might be saying the wrong thing, because that's not what it's about. But it's about thinking, is what I'm saying, you know, building that confidence? Is what I'm saying, you know, instilling all those, you know, all the things that we'd like them to think about themselves, and we'd like them to think about the world, that language. Is there a way that we can phrase this differently in the future so that we're building them up? Yeah, well, in a really positive way.
It's very hard being a parent, isn't it? You know.
Yes.
I'm a parent. I mean, I have adult children now, 20 and 23, but I'm still parenting them, and it's still hard times. And, you know, sometimes you just say things. You're frustrated, you're tired, you've done it 15 times with them already, you know? So it's also about being kind to yourself. Be kind to yourself. You can't, you're not their coach, you know?
No. Yes, absolutely.
So I think this whole breathing thing, taking some time to step back, is important for parents too. You know, one of the biggest lessons I learned is that I make a much better response if I just take that breath in, and I take it in a way that nobody notices, because that can then look like you're a bit frustrated. And I learned to make a sound which was an appreciative, I hear you sound, like and that helped me, because the more I practiced it, the more my brain took that on as, just be calm, just take a minute, just reset, focus in on what part of your body has just leapt as a trigger response. You know, and we're talking about seconds here. But it gave me that time. It gave me 1 or 2 seconds in which to go, that's triggered me. I'm feeling really angry by what they've just said there. If I shout back, is that really going to fix things for me? What do I want as an outcome here? What do I want from this? And then you respond better. You don't always respond brilliantly, but you will, I promise you, respond better than if you just go back. And I mean, thinking of food, you know, you've spent a lot of time preparing something. Maybe you've worked from your wonderful book, and, you know, you thought, okay, this is going to work. And I know you say in the book, don't expect it always to work first time. But
Yeah.
if you just put a lot of effort into something, you're just hoping it's going to work first time, aren't you?
Yeah, absolutely.
And your child goes, nah, no way, that's disgusting. It looks yucky. That's going to hurt. It's going to hurt. You're going to feel like a failure. I've gone to all this effort. So what's your reaction to that? There's going to be a reaction. How do you temper that reaction? How do you bring it down so that your response to your child is one that allows them to express how they feel? You can acknowledge that fear that's come up. Mum's challenging me now with that food that I don't eat, and she's disguised it as a clown face, but I know it's in there somewhere, and so that you can come back to that. And that doesn't mean that you have to put up with being spoken to in an unkind way, or that you have to put up with tantrums. We can walk away. We can say, I can see you're not ready to try that now. Talk about that now. We'll come back to that later.
I love that. Yeah. And I guess I being the parent of a teen, we often have those conversations that get a little heated. And I was listening to, I think it was Karen Tui Boys who said, you can put yourself in time out.
Yes.
If you like, and I think actually that's quite positive. Rather than sending your team to the room, say, I'm going to go to my room.
Yeah. Well, I used to go to the laundry because it was far enough removed. If you've got 3 teenagers in the house, there's always laundry, isn't there?
Yeah.
Not that I'm a great fan of laundry.
No, absolutely.
It was for a number of reasons. One, it was far enough away. It was a plausible excuse. Okay, you're not ready to talk about that now, or we can't. Well, I can see this conversation's not going to work at the moment. That's okay. I have some chores to do. No, nothing more. And then I would go down to the laundry, fuming, But folding laundry, sorting laundry it's
cathartic, yes.
Very cathartic. Both sides of your brain. It allowed me to take time to breathe, but also I'm doing something with my hands. So right brain's coming in, taking over from left brain, which is trying to work things out, feeling outraged, sort that out, methodical, time to keep taking a breath. I'm far enough away, and then you can go back. So, and if I took myself off to my room, or, you want to be careful that you're not also doing the equivalent of storming off and slamming the door.
Yes, very good. All right. It's been fabulous to talk to you. Thanks, Diana. Lots and lots of food for thought. So I'm hoping that everybody else has taken as much from it as I've taken from it, even if they don't have a teen in the house. And now, if people need to get in touch with you, how can they do that?
I guess the best place to go to is my Facebook page, and you'll find me at Mindset Magicians on Facebook.
Fabulous.
Well, I have a website as well, www.mindsetmagicians.com. You can find me there.
Fabulous. So if somebody does have a child who's struggling around maths, or if somebody's does have a child that's anxious, then they can go to the Facebook page and they can go to the website and get in contact.
Yes, you can contact me through there on Messenger, have a look at what I'm doing, send me an email through my website, and I'll be happy to have a chat. So I offer a free session, if you like, about a half-hour session where I talk with parents over the phone or Skype, and we can talk about what it is they want, what's troubling them, what might be troubling their child, what's going on, and we can talk about whether the type of work I do
is going to be a fit. Okay.
Yeah.
Fabulous. Oh, well, that's great, and it's so nice to have a resource for families to go to. As I said, lovely to talk to you, and we'll catch up soon.
Oh, my pleasure, Judy. Thank you so much.
Thank you.